Hi, I'm Heather Dunlap, and this is a John Q movie speech. This is my audience. I chose to do my speech on John Q. It's actually about a gentleman that's showing the inequalities of insurance companies. The underlying themes of this movie is going to be inequality, despair, and ultimately hope. The director of this film actually knows a little something about this. Nick Cassavetes is the one that decided to direct John Q. His daughter, too, has a congenital heart disease, and so he may know a little something about that. So how many of you guys have insurance? Probably all of you. But do you know off the top of your head if it's going to be a HMO insurance, a PPO? Do you know if it's a private, if it's through your provider, your work, or if it's through the state? Most people don't know that. Do you know which kind of maximums you may have, where they top out at? If you don't, you're not alone. This story actually on John Q is about a working class blue collar family, and John Q and his son and his wife. They take their seemingly normal 10-year-old healthy son to a ball game, and he actually passes out at the ball game, and he's carried away in an ambulance. When they get him to the hospital to see what's wrong with their son, it ends up that he has congestive heart failure and is going to need a new heart. So he'll have to be put on the heart transplant. John Q, knowing that he's had insurance for in excess of 10 years with the company that he's been with for 10 years, tells them to go ahead with the procedure. That being said, whenever he gets in there to talk to the doctor and everything, they find out that his insurance maxes out at $25,000. The procedure is actually $250,000. This leaves a working class family quite a sum of money to make up on their own. So he begins to fill out appeals to try to get the insurance to pay for it. He begins to fill out state and government aid to try to get subsidiaries to jump over and pay for his son's surgery, but he was denied. He isn't able to get the insurance because it's an HMO lower policy to cover his his procedure. And he doesn't qualify to get any Medicare or Medicaid because he works too much and has too much money. Although this story is a little bit far-fetched, I don't think anybody can ignore the fact that John Q could be any one of us. It could be your mother, your sister, your friend, or it can even happen to you if you don't know your insurance maximums and premiums. The three themes in the movie is going to be inequality, despair, and hope. This is a picture of their son when he was healthy. And then whenever they get him in the hospital and find out that he's actually going to need a heart transplant. John Q begins to do what any normal parent would do. He begins to go to his city and his friends and raising funds. He sells off everything he owns to try to raise the funds to get his son Michael the procedure that he needs to save his life. You even see in one part of the film, he sells his wedding ring to try to get the money to get his son a heart transplant. He doesn't quite make enough money, so he's unable to raise enough money to get his son on the list and get him a heart transplant, which is ultimately going to it's going to end in Michael's death. The other theme is going to be despair. Whenever John Q finds out that he hasn't raised enough money to save his son's life, basically. So he doesn't have enough money to get this procedure that his 10-year-old son needs, but yet he knows that there's nothing else they can do for him. They put him on a heart monitor, and he's basically watching his son die. The despair, as a working class gentleman that's kind of lived a really good life as far as being a law-abiding citizen and everything, as a father, he's put between a rock and a hard spot. Nobody wants to watch their 10-year-old son die before they do. John Q quote that I chose here out of the movie is him saying that I'm not going to bury my son's going to bury me. I feel like any parent can relate to this statement. That being said, that John Q's done everything that he can do in his power as a parent, so the desperation kicks in and he decides to hold the emergency room and the cardiologist that would do his son's procedure hostage to put his son at the top of the transplant list because he doesn't have the funds. So he bolts himself into the ER, and they agree to move his son Michael up to the top of the heart transplant list. That's great news. There's some hope there. However, they come back and they find out that there's not a perfect match for Michael. So there's no heart that would fit his, no blood type, it wouldn't work for him. So, still ultimately faced with his son's morality, even after he's done everything by the book and after he's made a heartfelt appeal and has held the surgical areas hostage and the ER hostage, John Q has approached the cardiologist about killing himself so that they can take the heart out of his chest and give it to his son to keep his son alive. Now, the third theme in this is going to be hope, because a lady that was a heart donor actually has a car accident, and because John Q's son was bumped to the top of the list, she was a perfect match for his son. So before John Q actually is able to ensue killing himself to give his son his heart, they were able to stop him and get his son the heart that he needs. The very last I'm going to talk about is going to be hope. That's the very last theme. And as you see, hope and inequality and despair is woven throughout this entire series, because everywhere there's a little bit of inequality, there's hope that somebody's going to do the right thing. And then there's despair when the right thing just doesn't go off as executed. At the end of the scene, you see John Q in a courtroom. And you see his son Michael, and he's healthy, and he's smiling, he has his new heart, he's flexing his muscles, he's acting like a normal 10-year-old son. That's hope. However, you do see them arresting John Q because he did take hostage an emergency room with a group of people. At the end of the show, as you see John Q's son Michael flexing and being a normal, healthy little boy, you also see some of the people that he held hostage there clapping for him. And one in particular follows him to the car and told him, "John Q, you're my hero." That's my conclusion of the John Q speech. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I wanted to end this with a little side note of John Cassavetes, which is actually the director of this movie. His daughter was born with a congenital heart disease, and although he has means and he has the funds to get his daughter what she needs, her condition's ultimately going to result in her having to get a heart transplant as well. So, I mean, this is just proof that this John Q story, although a little far-fetched, and even if you take an emergency room hostage, it's proof that it can happen to anybody. It can even happen to the director of this film. So that's the conclusion of the John Q speech. Thank you for listening, audience. Will you turn around and wave at the camera for me, please? Thank you.